Joining us for more on tonight's topic is Rod Thompson, president of the Sarasota Republican Club, and joining us by Skype is Ben Pallara, manager of United for Care, the campaign. We invited the Drug-Free Manatee and No on 2 campaign to be here tonight, but they were unable to attend. Ben, let me start with you because the ballot amendment this year is very similar to what we saw 2 years ago, which was defeated. Why do you think it's going to be any different this time?
Well, first of all, only in Florida is getting 58% of the vote considered a defeat. But
well, it didn't become law.
It did not become law, correct. We didn't get to 60%, but I think we will get to 60% and then some this time around because, listen, I think the people of Florida demonstrated in the first vote that they were broadly supportive of medical marijuana, and I think it's only increased since then. We're also going to have a lot different election this time around, just with the electorate being a lot bigger, number one, younger, blacker, more Hispanic, generally more amenable to a medical marijuana initiative like the one that's on the ballot as Amendment 2.
Rod, we were talking before the show, and you said that it's very hard to stake a position against this when you see people like the woman that was in our story who is so desperate for relief and anecdotally, at least, benefits from it.
Yeah, right. As we talked before, when you hear about her situation with ALS and you think about some children I know with seizures have gotten some help from it and parents are going to do anything, I totally understand that and have an awful lot of empathy for that. However, I don't think this is a good route for us to be traveling for 3 reasons. Basically, one, the actual efficacy of the drug use. It's all anecdotal. The FDA has not approved it. As a matter of fact, just a few weeks ago, they chose again not to change its status at all, leaving it substance 1, which means it has no medicinal value. Number 2, in the states that do have it as a medical medicine, marijuana is medicine, they are not sold through normal drugstores because, of course, the FDA hasn't approved it, so they're sold through kind of glorified pot shops, really, where people can get it. And in LA alone, just did a search, and there are, where my son lives, there's more of those shops, medical marijuana shops, than there are Starbucks. But third, and I think most important really to me, because I've watched this a number of times around now, is that it's a gateway policy to get full legalization. And I don't know if that's Ben's position or not at all. I'm not saying that for all of them, but that's been the case in all of the other states so far.
Let's unpack all of this. One, there were allegations 2 years ago that this really was a ploy to try to get more Democrats to come out to vote. Is that what you believe?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, based on the primary backer of it, the lawyer who likes ambulances, yes, I think that that's exactly what that was. And it didn't work, but there did show that there was real support for it in the state because of examples like this woman with the ALS and others.
Right. But and Ben, how do you respond to, yes, the federal government just as recently as a couple of weeks ago turned down efforts to take it off the list of illegal drugs?
Well, first of all, let me back up for just a second and say that in our polling that we did right after the election, 40% of Rick Scott voters voted yes for Amendment 2 in 2014. So we did have some bipartisan consensus on the issue. But as it relates to the DEA, yes, they kept it as Schedule 1. But another thing that they did do was significantly expand the amount of research that is now allowed to be done on marijuana throughout the United States. So it wasn't a total rejection of marijuana as medicine by the DEA, which, by the way, is a organization charged with defending the nation's drug policies and prosecuting marijuana. It's not it's not the FDA. But they did at the same time open up research in a significant way, even as they did not reschedule it.
And what would you say to folks like Rod here, who says that this really is a gateway to making marijuana use totally legal, whether or not it's for medical purposes or not?
Listen, he's correct in that there is yet to be a state that has legalized marijuana without first legalizing medical marijuana. But I would point out to Rod and asking for his vote yes on Amendment 2 that, listen, we're on the ballot twice for medical marijuana. You got to do this thing by constitutional initiative because the legislature is certainly not going to legalize marijuana in the state. And, is there 60% of the state of Florida that wants to legalize marijuana? I don't believe so. So even if Rod is true and one ultimately does lead to the other, it's not happening for a long time in this state.
Rod, in the end, do you think that, given it's a presidential election year and voter turnout, both by Democrats and Republicans, are really at its highest moments, and especially with this particular election, whether this being on the ballot will have an effect in terms of turnout one way or the other?
Do I think that the medical marijuana will drive turnout? No. Do I think that medical marijuana might be helped by turnout driven by it? Yes, I think that that's possible, that actually Amendment 2 could actually be helped by it being a presidential year, and an unusual presidential year in which a lot of voters that maybe don't always vote in presidential elections will be going to the polls.
And Ben, there have been some comparisons in other states, in Colorado, in terms of the difficulties that have arisen in terms of operating this as a business and with revenue. Why would it be any different here in Florida?
Well, first, I'd like to point out both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump support medical marijuana. But to answer your question, listen, what's happened in 25 other states plus the District of Columbia when medical marijuana laws have been passed is people have gotten relief. Sick and suffering people like Kathy Jordan have gotten the medicine they need, and the sky has not fallen. There has not been any significant or really insignificant deleterious effect on these states. People's lives have gone on as they were, except for people like Kathy Jordan who have gotten some relief as a result of it.
Then why would organizations like Drug Free Manatee and the other groups be so opposed to it?
Well, I mean, listen, it's in their name, right? These organizations exist purely to oppose drug policy reform in any way, shape, or form, whether we're talking about medical marijuana, rescheduling marijuana at the DEA, or anything else. I mean, that's their reason for being.
Yeah, Rod, is this, as Ben suggested, really not an issue between Democrat and Republican? Because, as he pointed out, 40% of Rick Scott voters also voted for medical marijuana 2 years ago.
Right, which means an awful large percentage of Democrats voted against it. So I think it's not a totally partisan issue, no. And for some of the reasons that we saw earlier on. But I do think it's worth remembering that I can't get into the science of it, and you can't really either, and probably Ben can't too deeply either. But the FDA, whose job is to approve all the drugs in this country, have concluded so far that there just is no medical valid efficacy for marijuana.
And we'll have to leave it there. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.